I would like to call the meeting to order. If I could ask you to all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Kiley, if you would please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It's certainly easy to tell McKinley is in the house.
Yes. Great job on the pledge.
All right, first up, we have Wednesday's pet. Former First Selectman Sherri Steeneck is back to show us her new friend.
Okay, this is Rowdy.
Rowdy, okay.
He's very gentle, friendly. He's a male, as you can tell. From my calling him a he. Anyway, he's not neutered. You can pick him up on the 11th at Animal Control. Let's see, 211 One Rod Highway, or Richard White Way. And very personable, very friendly, and would be great for anybody. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sherri. Next up is we have item 4, some minutes to approve. I have a motion to consider and act upon the minutes of regular meeting from May 6, 2015. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, my favorite part of today. Recognition of McKinley Schools, Elementary School's Odyssey of the Mind winners. Do we have any of them here? Okay, good, good. Would somebody like to come to the podium and fill us in a little bit on what the program was about?
I'm just going to introduce Sally Connolly. I'm Leslie Pearson, principal of McKinley, but I want to turn it over to Sally Connolly, who is the team mom coordinator, and she'll tell you all about the cerebellum McBrainiacs.
Wow, all right.
Hi. Now,
Hi.
who am I directing? Everybody
Just
here, right?
If
Okay.
you talk to the board,
Okay.
the camera there will catch you,
Sounds good.
and the microphone will pick up what you say.
Perfect. Okay. Well, basically, about 2 years ago, a mom at McKinley, Angie Peckman, who's actually just finished as the PTA president, she had wanted to bring Odyssey of the Mind to McKinley. She had that experience as a child growing up, and so she called in Jennifer, Max, and Connolly. I just want to throw out those names because they were instrumental in making it happen, because I feel like I'm somehow getting a lot of the glory, but it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for those people. So she came and basically talked about it with any of the interested parents and their students and children. And what ended up materializing from that is last year we had a couple older teams and then the primary level teams, which are non-competitive. And basically the idea of Odyssey of the Mind is that it's kind of like a long-term problem that you have to solve as a team. And so this year, there was a choice of 5 questions, and we basically read the synopses to the kids who were interested on our team, and they came up with the one that's entitled Runaway Train. And if you read these at first, it seems relatively simple, but basically it said, okay, we need to have a vehicle, a small-sized vehicle, basically go throughout a number of different obstacles on this track. Okay, it seems, you think about this cute little train going around a Christmas tree or something like that. But then when you get the actual problem, you realize that it's about 5 pages worth of very specific parameters and a very specific point system. And so really based on that, Odyssey, we just had meetings on a weekly basis, and Suzanne Groseffa, another mom, was the coordinator for this year. And what we did from that is, the other big thing I should point out with Odyssey is you are not, as a parent, allowed to basically do anything. The whole idea of it is that you're asking questions, and doing some encouragement and leading, but what was exciting for me about that was just showing the kids basically, or empowering, I should say, the kids to be able to come up with ideas. You know, so many times in life we come up with an idea or somebody comes up with an idea and you say, oh no, you can't do that, you know. But when you think about it, so many inventions wouldn't be invented if somebody didn't decide to think outside the box and actually try something. So, you know, throughout education, I know for me, a lot of times there was a lot of regurgitating, wanting to get a really good grade, wanting to go to the best school, and, you know, kind of follow this specific track. And I think what Odyssey of the Mind does is it basically teaches kids that you can do something that might not be as mainstream or come at it from another angle and be successful. So anyway, so that was kind of the story. So we went to, I guess we'll call everybody up in just a minute, but basically we went up to Southern Connecticut State University. Our problem had 17 different teams, and of the 17 teams, we were in the top 3, so we were third. We missed it by 2 points, the second place, but we were very proud because this was the first time any of these students, who were 4 fifth graders and 1 fourth grader, and the first time they'd ever done Odyssey. And you had teams there who had really strong programs for years and years with coaches who kind of knew what they were doing for years and years. So, and then in the spontaneous segment, which you're basically brought into a room without the coach and only with these specific judges, they actually placed second. And huge. So it was just really, really, and they actually beat the first and second teams from the other portion of the competition. So Odyssey isn't about winning, it's really about problem solving and actually being successful in that realm. But the fact that they actually placed in that kind of top 3 and being McKinley, which sometimes gets some negative attention, I feel like that was the icing on the cake. So that is the story. So I was just there as the coach, and we had amazing parents who were obviously so supportive, who brought them. If you recall this winter, most of our practices were on Mondays. So a couple days we did a few hikes through the blizzard to kind of get the kids to a practice because we didn't want to waste any time. So just a wonderful, dedicated group, and they were all interested in continuing next year at Tomlinson. And even the fourth grader who's moving up to a fifth grader wants to stay with the same team. So she'll just kind of, you know, basically move up into our group. So that's the story. I've talked, I think, enough. I don't know if there's like questions about anything, but really, I want the kids to be able to.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. It's
Right.
excited to hear about it. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
I just want to say congratulations. My son is part of an Odyssey of the Mind team at Tomlinson. He's in the 7th grade and did it in 6th grade with Jennifer, Max, and Kelly's son. And I saw you up there at the finals. You did a fabulous job. Congratulations. And I have to say, it's a tremendous program. So thrilled that you did, you worked so hard and did so well. I think the number one thing I learned from having a child in the program is that you have to work together as a team. And that teamwork is really difficult when you have to compromise and, you know, try to, you know, be very creative, but then create something that works as a team. So obviously that paid off, and great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Kiley?
Yes, please. I completely agree. Thank you for those kind words. We are very proud of you, and we're very proud of your school, your teachers, and your parents who worked together to make this happen as the larger team, but the team that worked on the project itself. You really demonstrated your abilities to think and have visionary thoughts looking forward and how to solve a problem, and it's really wonderful to see. And the fact that this was your first year through, and you finished right near the top, having never been even through the process before, let alone the actual work that you had to do as part of it, is remarkable and a testament to your dedication and hard work. So congratulations.
Very cool.
I got to tell you guys, I'm jealous. I went to Holland Hill School, and we didn't get to do that. It was a few years ago, but we didn't get to do that.
Just a couple.
But what I really like, you hit on a number of key words. One, I love the idea of teamwork. Because if I look back on my life, one of the things that's been most important is learning how to work with others, with a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different inputs. And you guys are already doing that. That's exciting. I love the idea of competition, because I think that kind of gives you a chance to kind of push yourself a little bit. And I love that it's involved on the mental aspect of things, because I don't think we get pushed enough on that. I love the problem-solving part of this. My college degree is in engineering. And engineers are really, in the simplest sense, problem solvers. All right? And I got to tell you, what I've learned since college is life is full of problems. And when you get in a job like this, as my colleagues will attest, it's sometimes one problem after another, and you guys are going to be prepared for that. So no matter where you go, problem solving is invaluable. I also love the fact that the kids did the work. I can't tell you how important that is. One of the things that I learned from coaching in sports was that as a coach, the kids are the only ones on the field. So you actually have to let them do the work, and I think it's great that they're learning to do that in this capacity.
And let them, just one quick story is, I remember asking a question saying, okay, well, how do you think we can attach that to that? And of course, you might know, or I might know what the best way is to do that. But then you have to let them try it the first way, right? And watch everything maybe fall apart, right? We did that a number of times. And then they realize that's not a successful solution and do it again. And just, I don't think I mentioned, but the vehicles that they created, they actually did one that was magnetism, kind of a track. So that was one of them. And then one that was a spring-loaded kind of a car based on some broken pieces we had of like a drawer divider. So it just basically, once you pushed it back, it was able to reach, have the momentum of going up, a hill or overcoming a gap in a track. So it was kind of, certainly very advanced based on the first cars that were attempted, where the wheels were a little off and it went whoop, 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 down the track. So it was very exciting to see that development over the period of time. So thank you for the comments.
No, absolutely. And guys, when you start to think about things, it helps you all the way through life. One of my best memories from college is when we participated, my team was in a cement canoe race. And we had to design and make a cement canoe. And it was a phenomenal challenge. We had to do it all on our own, and we raced against other universities. And we came in first, or I wouldn't be telling the story. But we did some very innovative things. So we didn't start problem solving at your age. So you guys are going to be much further along when you get to high school, when you get to college, than we ever were. So that's one of the other reasons I'm excited for you. I got to thank the coaches for taking the time to do this. One of my favorite experiences was coaching kids in sports and that type of thing, but I would have loved to have a chance to coach in something like this. So I'm jealous of you too. So
Thank you.
And doing that. We have some certificates for each of the participants, and why don't we come out?
Sure.
And what we'll do is call you up one at a time to present these to you, if that's
Great.
okay.
Thank you.
First up, Sally Connolly.
Oh, hey, hi.
Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you very
And
much.
why don't you stand on that end?
Okay.
Bring everybody else.
Bring everybody up.
Coleman Connolly. There we are. Congratulations.
That is my son, by the way.
Nice job.
Violet Diaz. No?
Yeah.
All right. Very cool.
It is beautiful.
Very neat.
Congratulations.
Sebastian Rodriguez.
Good job.
Zoe Steele. Zoe, all right. Congratulations. And Morgan Silva. All right. Can we get everybody kind of grouped together down
Yeah,
here?
come on in. Get in front.
Okay.
Get in front. You
Yeah,
guys are
you're
important.
in
Come
front.
on.
Team in the front row.
Absolutely.
Aw.
Okay.
Where should we look?
I could take one.
We got it?
Good.
All right, that's it, Mike.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you next year.
Absolutely.
Should I take them away?
Leaving is a lot more exciting.
Thank you
Ice-
so much again.
You're welcome.
Ah.
All right. Next up, we have a couple of appointments. We'll take these one at a time, if that's okay, because one of these has to be unanimous vote. To hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments. Fair TV Commission, and this does require a unanimous vote from the Board of Selectmen, but also RTM approval. Stuart Strelzler, unaffiliated, 56 Lamplighter Lane, for a term of 7/15 to 7/18. Is Mr. Strelzler here? There we are. Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the board?
I just want to congratulate you for volunteering for this important commission. You have a great media background, and I can tell that you will be a wonderful addition to the Fair TV committee, so thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo that. You have tremendous broadcast experience, and I think the commission will really benefit from your input. So thank you for volunteering.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, but also point out that you responded to our ad in the paper looking for
great.
folks involved in this, I believe. And we are trying to reach out to new blood and not just go through the normal acts. So I think you're a great example of somebody who wanted to get involved, has some very relevant background, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and looking forward to your participation and leadership on the Fair TV Commission. An exciting time, I think. All right, great. Any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Back to the board. Are we ready to vote? All-
Second?
Did we move it?
I did not hear that.
All right.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, great. Are we ready to vote?
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, and thank you. Would you like to share any comments?
Nothing at this time.
All right, very good.
The RTM meeting next Wednesday.
Monday.
Monday and Wednesday are the committee meetings.
Oh, committee meetings, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, both of them.
Great, thank you. Thank you. All right, next up, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments to the Land Acquisition Commission. Linda Batchelder, unaffiliated, 175 Shoreham Village Drive, for a term of 11/13 to 11/17. This is to replace Jay Adams, who resigned. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All right, is Ms. Batchelder here? No, not at this time. She, Jen, I believe she called, though, and said she was going to be unable to make it for, I think she had a personal reason on
I
that.
believe that's correct, yes.
Is the board, based on reviewing the resumes and any prior conversations, are you comfortable proceeding with this item?
I am.
Okay. All right, so we have that before us. Any discussion? Any further comments? Hearing none. Any comments from the public? Back to the board. I'd just like to thank Ms. Batchelder for participating. Land acquisition is one of those boards that really doesn't have a large flow of information going through and doesn't always have something to do. You kind of have to be at the ready, because when something does come up, we generally need a decision pretty quickly on it. So I thank her for stepping up to help the town out in this capacity. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, congratulations, Ms. Batchelder. And Jen, if you could make sure she's notified. All right. Next up, to hear a report from the Alzheimer's Association, the Connecticut chapter. Hi. Would you please just come to the podium and introduce yourself?
My name is Lexi Rodriguez Kennedy, and I just want to say thank you again for having me. It's an honor. I'm humbled. I'm the Special Events Director at the Alzheimer's Association Connecticut chapter, and I'm responsible for the Fairfield County region. I'm also a Fairfield resident. I live now on Figler Avenue and lived on West Morgan, basically across the street for several years. So I'm an Alzheimer's advocate and a huge Fairfield advocate. So the Alzheimer's Association, the Connecticut chapter is one of over 80. We're nationwide. And why are we here? June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death. Every 67 seconds, someone develops Alzheimer's disease. And here in Connecticut, there are 77,000 people living with the disease that we have diagnosed, and 177,000 caregivers. I got involved because my grandfather started showing signs, and the numbers are staggering when you look at how many people are going to be diagnosed. And the other thing is people are getting diagnosed earlier, younger and younger, so people as young as 40. So what are we here doing about it? The association offers programs and services. We do a lot with advocacy efforts, and of course we fund research. We are the largest nonprofit funder of research, so we are the 3rd largest behind the NIH and the Chinese government. And that of course is critical. We do a lot here in the town of Fairfield. Especially myself, we partner with the Fairfield Senior Center. We do a lot with outreach and awareness with Fairfield University, with Fairfield Theater Company, with Motley Media and Fairfield Living Magazine. We've trained and done a lot of work with the Fairfield Police Department, the Fire Department, training EMTs what to do, again, when they're working with somebody with the disease. So we have 3 caregiver, this is when I get excited, but we have 3 caregiver support groups that we, again, have here in town. So while I cover a vast, area from Greenwich all the way up to Stratford, we do focus a lot here in town. We just had a huge event at the theater company called Band Together. And raised a lot of money. And Mike, of course, you know about this because I'm Mr. Tetro. Sorry, I feel like I got to know you well when you tied the first ribbon onto the trees down the post road on Fairfield. It was the first time we painted the town purple. So leading up to this concert, we had ribbons, and I brought a picture which we're going to print officially and frame for you. Oh, nice. And Mike again tied that first ribbon. Different retailers got involved, businesses, the pantry, Chef's Table, Aged Salon had purple hair extensions. Our color is purple. So we really painted the town. We're looking forward to doing it again at the end of June. We've been talking to a lot of businesses who want to do it again. They said both their clients, the residents, everyone kept saying, oh my gosh, I'm glad you're finally doing something. And for us, of course, we're thrilled to have more people know about us. And as I said, I'm, again, looking at the end of June to do it again. And then our largest fundraiser in Fairfield County is the Fairfield County Walk to End Alzheimer's on Sunday, October 4th. And right now we are doing everything we can to raise awareness for it. To give you a sense of the growth of this walk, in the past 3 years, we've gone from 100,000 to over 300,000. We had 30% growth last year. We had over 2,000 people walking with us. Registered 3 years ago were only 600 people. So our growth is this. And again, that's without having a ton of staff behind us. And so I would like it to grow even faster. And again, efforts like this and being invited to speak here today, I'm hoping is another step forward in doing that. So Sunday, October 4th, and I've already put some flyers around, and I know we'll have one here in the building. So I appreciate all the support there. And again, everything that ladders up is just fueling the programs, the services, the advocacy, the research. And a Fairfield resident here has been a huge supporter. Dave Samuels is a musician. He performed or spoke at Band Together in his early 60s. And again, he's a huge Fairfield advocate for the cause here. Okay. Yeah, so that's why I'm here today. And again, June, Alzheimer's Brain Awareness Month. So I know that's what we're discussing. And thank you.
All right, no, thank you.
Questions?
Just a couple quick points. One, okay, good, we'll do that. Thank you. I'm thrilled that this is getting set up in Fairfield and being a resource to our residents, and love your enthusiasm. My dad's 94, so it's certainly important to me personally, and I think there are more and more folks, as people live longer, more and more people with aging parents that certainly are facing this type of issue and are potential caregivers. You talked about different support groups. If somebody's interested in joining one of those, is there a number or place to contact?
Good question, and I would direct people to our website,
Which is?
alz.org//CT. So alz.org/CT, and there's a tab that's called support groups, and you'll get every support group in the state of Connecticut, and especially and the ones here in Fairfield.
and if they're interested in participating in your walk on October 4th.
That would be fantastic as well, and that is alz.org/CT, and there's a big link that says Walk to End Alzheimer's, and they can form a team.
All right, very good. Any comments from my colleagues?
I just want to thank you for bringing this before us and bringing the color purple to us. It's a beautiful color, and it means a lot. And like with anything, awareness is the first step, right? Creating awareness, creating the buzz, and the more people who know, who are aware, the more get involved and get excited like you and put their energies and efforts behind, helping a worthy cause. So as this problem grows across our country and becomes bigger, it's nice to see organizations like yours that are staying up with it and working to find a cure and helping everyone along the way, their families and themselves to deal with their issues. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to add, I work in a skilled nursing facility, home. I work in geriatrics, and I think the biggest stressor for families is where do we go for help? Where is there a resource out there for me? So the fact that we can say there's a resource here in Fairfield, not only for the person with Alzheimer's, but for the caregiver, which is huge. It says so much. So thank you for all that you do. I want to just say that the other thing that I find, and I don't know where this is going in the Fairfield area, but there's a real shortage in terms of memory impaired units for people to go to, or dementia care units, once the person is not able to stay at home. And I see that as a trend, an unmet need that I'm hoping we can look at growing in this area. So, but thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
And that's an interesting point, if I may. I'm on the WPCA, and there is a plan that came before us just recently, early stage. They're looking at the water and sewage use of the building that they want to put up, but it is for a memory care center.
Oh, where is that?
It's going to be up, if it goes through, it'll be up behind the Angus, heading toward the plaza in the back there. There's a couple properties that have been purchased. They're trying to put together a building project there, which would be a memory care center. And I believe that's the first one in town.
I don't know of any.
That I know of.
So
it's getting out there, and people are getting involved and, putting facilities together to help people. So it's the awareness again, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, thank you for creating that.
Just as an add-on comment, I also am hearing about different programs that come up. A number of the convalescent homes, that type of thing, are looking at having Alzheimer's units or
That's what they-
content
right.
within that.
Yeah.
So
Right. Memory
there will
care,
be
yeah.
there will be
Yeah, and we do a
additional.
lot with the Jewish home, the Carlton,
Yeah.
Ludlow, so we're sometimes, part of certain conversations, part of
Yeah.
talking about expansion, and, we have so many calls to our helpline number, which, where we work with people to direct them to what the best place is. Is it staying at home? Is it going to a skilled nursing? Is it going to assisted living? So we're
Right.
definitely entrenched in those conversations.
A lot of difficult decisions for caregivers going through that. So it's good they have somebody to help
Yeah.
out. So.
So someone to help them
All
along,
right.
yeah.
And in addition, we do have a proclamation from the town for you, which is from the town of Fairfield. Whereas the Alzheimer's Association Connecticut chapter is the primary source of information and support to the thousands of Connecticut residents dealing with the effects of Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. And whereas the Alzheimer's Association offers our communities 24/7 multilingual helpline support, family training seminars, care consultation, safe return training, support groups, and educational programs for both healthcare professionals and caregivers. And whereas the chapter has influenced public policy changes and has provided support to dementia research in the hope of finding a cure. And whereas the association's mission is to eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research, to provide and enhance care and support for all affected, and to reduce the risk of dementia through promotion of brain health. And whereas the association's vision is to live in a world without Alzheimer's disease. Now therefore, I, Michael C. Tetro, first Selectman of the town of Fairfield, do hereby proclaim June 2015 as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month in the town of Fairfield. Thank you very much for all you're doing. And let's get up and present this, if we can.
I'd love to have my interns come up for
Oh,
the
brilliant.
photo, if that's okay.
why don't you come on up, guys?
Arbiter from our.
We can alternate.
No, please get in front.
Fairfield champions.
Here we are.
Stand around.
One more. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And are you going to introduce your interns?
Yes, oh my gosh, Evie and Ashlyn, Fairfield love those students.
Oh, fantastic.
Doing
All
a
right.
6-week program with us, they've been incredible, so.
That's great. Thank you very much for helping out.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 8 on our agenda, to hear a final report from the Fairfield Storm Sandy Recovery Committee. Mr. Barnhart.
A final report. This is it? The end?
For this component.
This
This piece is done.
This is it.
I'm not sure it's done for some of the folks that are still struggling to rebuild. But, this component is at a conclusion. So for the record, I'm Mark Barnhart. I'm the Director of Community Economic Development for the town, and it was really my honor and privilege to serve as the chairman of the Storm Sandy Relief Committee, which became the Storm Sandy Recovery Committee. I was assisted quite capably by a number of folks who also served on the committee, which I'd like to recognize for the record. Clerk, who was the Director of Human Resources, who was subsequently retired and was replaced by Terry Giegengack. Also on the committee was Reverend Dr. Alita Ward of the Greenfield Hill Congregational Church, Reverend Judith Rhodes of St. Peter's, and Debbie Zeef, resident here in town. Operation Hope served as the fiduciary, being a 501c3 organization. That was important in the immediate aftermath of the storm. The town was beginning to receive inquiries from very caring individuals that wanted to contribute monetarily, and we wanted to make sure that they were able to get credit for those contributions. So those gifts were channeled through Operation Hope as a 501c3. They provided a record of the gift, and those funds were then segregated into this separate fund.
If I might emphasize that point, Mark, I think one of the things that we were not ready for in the aftermath of Storm Sandy was the tremendous outpouring of volunteers and the tremendous outpouring of those that wanted to make donations. And we really had to set this up overnight.
On the fly, yep.
Working with our finance department to make sure what we were doing was legal and appropriately accounted for. Operation Hope was kind enough to step up and provide a vehicle because the town itself isn't a 501c3. So that between working, Mark kind of got volunteered / got shanghaied into helping out in this regard. So I want to thank Mark for his stepping up along with us. He has been one of those players that has stepped up and filled a hole in management whenever we've needed it. And I think if you look at the strict definition of economic development director, Mark does much more than that for our town. So I want to thank him. But I just wanted to emphasize what happened and how that came together so fast, Mark.
And Operation Hope was really uniquely positioned not only to provide a vehicle for receiving those gifts and donations, but also to provide case management and intake services, which they do so well for many of our disadvantaged residents here in town. So as part of that, they provided case management intake services for the applicants. So they assisted the committee in terms of taking the applications, meeting with the individual applicants, determining what their needs were, and then presenting the cases for our consideration and approval. So it was really a very good relationship there, which is not surprising, I'm sure, to all of you, given their longstanding relationship with the town, their service in the community. So the committee had two functions, obviously, to receive those gifts and to account for them and to assist those that were affected by the storm. Unlike some of the other programs that were set up. We didn't have any strict income guidelines. Anyone that was really a resident of the town at the time of the storm that was affected by the storm could apply for assistance. And we did our best to make a determination based on need and the funds available to provide whatever assistance we could at that time. One of the nice things as we got started, we were also fortunate to have a lot of representation from other groups around the table. So we were able to leverage both other sources of capital, other monetary assistance that might be available, as well as human capital, folks that were willing to volunteer. I want to single out for a special recognition the Westbridge Coalition and Habitat for Humanity, both of which are groups that mobilize volunteers to actually do small projects, and some of them were doing projects to assist those who were affected by the storm. So we had our first meeting in January of 2013. We had meetings as needed as cases came in. We would meet on an as-needed basis. We had a total of 25 meetings through March 26th of this year when we officially went out of business. We exhausted, we received a total of $387,790.67, and that was distributed in the form of direct financial assistance to 79 households. So the average grant was roughly $4,900. Those were 79 unique households, most of which were homeowners, but there were a few renters as well. The assistance ranged, as you can see from the report, there were a lot of different categories of assistance, including for folks to provide housing as well as storage fees, and to also cover the cost of rebuilding. We also were, in addition to the grants, in addition to the gifts and monetary contributions we got from Fairfield residents and businesses, which totaled almost $115,000. We also secured 4 grants, the largest of which was the American Red Cross, but we also got sizable gifts from the Robin Hood Foundation, as well as the United Way and Fairfield County Community Foundation. So again, it's as Mike, I guess, alluded to, it was it's a little bit far afield maybe in some respects from my normal job, but I would say that this was by far one of the most rewarding experiences. I think I speak for the entire committee in terms of trying to help folks, truly those that were in need, that were really, a lot of people were very frustrated with the process. It was a difficult, and it's still a very difficult process for many that are still in the process of rebuilding from the storm. But this was in small way a small salve on some wounds to try to get a small gift out there that they didn't have to worry about. So from that respect, I know I speak for the entire committee. We found it extremely rewarding, and we would gladly do it again. So thank you.
Any comments from the board?
Well, a big thank you to you and your committee for everything you've done. I mean, it was a devastating storm. It affected our entire town, our entire region. But I'm sure that the 79 families that were able to come to you for some level of assistance are very grateful to both the town and to your efforts in your committee, and to the very generous volunteers or contributors who put the money into the fund. I mean, it's just a great, wonderful collaboration of what Fairfield is about. It's what we do when we have a challenge. This committee stepped up, and you did a great job, and I'm sure that everyone is very grateful for everything you've done, and that includes myself.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I mean, it really gives us, pause in terms of people coming together and donating time and money to help people in their community. And it really does. I agree with Mr. Kiley. It says a lot about this town. But also that you were able to kind of pull it together. You were getting these donations and able, to partner with Operation Hope, and then to go after grants. I mean, you kind of mobilized beyond, you really maximized those contributions and made them work for the people in need. So that's tremendous. Thank you.
Yeah, this is really a community effort,
Right.
community in the truest sense of the word. So it, as Mike said initially, there was such a tremendous outpouring of support and contributions, not only volunteers, but monetary contribution. It was really heartwarming to witness and be a part of, so
Definitely.
thank you.
Yeah, no question. I think we talk about Fairfield being special, but I think this is one of the examples of just how special the community is, given the wide-ranging impact of the storm and how many families were hit and hurt and had property damage both near the beach and elsewhere, to come out of this and realize that literally before the streets are dry, folks are looking at where I can donate. They know people need the money, and they were willing to step out and do that, and it literally created a problem we had to solve, because that wasn't in the manual that we had, to be ready for donations and volunteer help that quickly. I know it made me proud to be part of this town and proud to be part of this community. So Mark, thank you again
Thank
for
you.
all your help.
Thank you.
We have item 9 from the town clerk, and this also requires RTM approval, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the town clerk. Resolved that Michael C. Tetro, first selectman of the town of Fairfield, is empowered to execute and deliver in the name and on behalf of the town of Fairfield a contract with the Connecticut State Library for historic documents, for historic documents preservation grant. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Browne, you're already here to fill us in. Please, take it away.
This is my annual grant that I've received the past several years. It comes from the fees that we collect and return to the state, and we get some of that money back in the form of a grant. Unfortunately, monies from throughout the state have been reduced. So we used to get $6,000 as a medium municipality, but now we're getting $4,000. So I have to cut back on the project I'm submitting. But I brought a visual aid, because it's a lot easier, to restore some historic documents. These are birth certificates from the 20s. And as you can see, the book is falling apart. And somebody was trying to be helpful and put tape in there, which is a no-no because of the acid. So it helps the book to actually deteriorate quicker. That's coming out of the binding as well. So there's a company that does this for me where they'll take the book apart, so and simply have to cut the sewing and clean it, restore it, and the certificates, they're all deacidified, cleaned up, and it costs a lot of money to do that. So we can only do a few books at a time.
Are you scanning them at the same time?
Yes, the company scans them and microfilm. So we can store the microfilm off-site, you use the scans. So it's actually a win-win way we do it.
Okay. Is it stored digitally at all?
Yes, when they do the scans.
Okay. So at that point, then we have them digitally as well as on the
The paper.
microfilm and on the paper on top of that.
Right.
Very good.
And it's just the use of, making photocopies constantly of different birth certificates. They got worn down.
Where are we? So these are from the 1920s that you're focused on. I mean, in the past, we're going back to the early 1900s, or when?
Yeah, we look at the ones that are really the worst.
Which
The
way are we
worst.
going?
Yeah.
What we did many years ago, I've had some money that we were able to take all the books from the baby boomers, 1940s forward, and they were all microfilmed, scanned, and we have all the digital images as well as the paper copies. So a few years ago, I was on the State Vitals Committee, and we discovered that the state can't guarantee that they have every vital record that has been sent to them. And that was after Katrina. So being that town hall is in the floodplain, I got a little nervous about that and sent all our books, trying to figure out which ones would be the most in demand. And so we started with 1940 forward. So.
Very interesting.
So have we done from 1940 to present day?
Yeah, we did to last year.
Okay, so it's really then now working from 1940
Back.
back. Wow.
and you just take the ones that are in the worst condition, prioritize them. And so we're doing the digital scan just kind of piecemeal. It's not.
Right, well, this is actually 2 years in here, 1926 and 27, and we have another couple of volumes as well. So we just take the ones that are really in the worst shape.
Those are birth certificates for
Yes.
just 2 years?
Yes.
For Fairfield?
Yes.
We didn't have that many people there. Wow. What's the earliest birth certificate that we have on record in Town Hall?
Early 1900s. Then we have the old indices where they didn't actually submit certificates. It just all went into a book, and where they had the parents' names, their occupations, the date of birth. You know, if it was a multiple birth, where they fell in the birth line.
Wow.
That's
And
great.
what we do is we'll recreate a certificate from that information if it's necessary.
We tend to think of your office in terms of doing all the recordings for real estate transactions and other transactions today. You don't tend to think of the history that's all behind that.
It's amazing. It really is.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I'm good. This is a great project that continues.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? All right, back to the board, and we did motion this and second it, Carmen, right?
We
John?
did.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item 10. This also requires RTM approval from the Director of Community and Economic Development to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Community and Economic Development. Resolved that the applications received under the Neighborhood Assistance Act program are hereby approved, and that the Director of Community and Economic Development is hereby designated as a municipal liaison of the town of Fairfield for this program. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Mr. Barnhart, can you take us through this?
Yes. So this is a state program that allows businesses to receive a tax credit on their corporate tax liability from the state for any charitable contributions they might make to qualified community programs that are conducted by either a nonprofit organization or a municipal agency. The agencies themselves need to apply, and we act as the vetting authority, if you will. So we have to receive those applications, conduct a public hearing, which we've done already, and then it has to be approved by this board and the RTM, the legislative body of the town, and submitted to the state by July 1st. And then after that, essentially we're out of the picture. The organizations that have approved programs or activities under the state program can then receive charitable gifts from companies that might have a tax liability, and those businesses can then apply to the state to get a tax credit. This past year, we, on behalf of these various community organizations, they received over $40,000 in contributions or gifts in support of their various programs. This year, we received a number of applications which are presented to you. Many are from organizations that I think all of you are probably familiar with. They've applied in the past. They can apply for up to $150,000. Typically, they don't see anywhere in that realm in terms of commitments. There are no town funds involved. We simply act as the agent by which we solicit the applications, review them, and then forward them to the state for their approval. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Just to clarify, we've got a list of organizations that have applied,
Yes,
and we're being asked to approve them as applicants.
correct.
That sounds good. I'm surprised there aren't more organizations on the list.
You know, it surprises me somewhat, although we've actually seen growth in the number of applications we received. I remember a couple years back, we didn't get any Fairfield organizations that applied. I think we had one organization who had a Fairfield resident on the board that applied. He was, the actual organization was Montessori School, was based in Wilton, which provoked some discussion on the part of the RTM at the time. From that, we've seen, now we're seeing, 8, 9, 10 applications from various groups. But it's a very simple application process. I think the issue is that unless you have a relationship, I think, with a corporate entity that has a state tax liability, you're not going to necessarily see anything out of it. In fact, some programs, I can see some on this list that have applied in the past that didn't receive any contributions. So that's not unusual, but some have been very successful in terms of mining this particular program.
So in essence, what you need is a donation
Yeah.
from a corporation
That has a state corporate tax liability.
that has a tax liability.
Right.
And so we're looking at, right now, we've got Fairfield Theater Company, Wakeman Memorial, Notre Dame High School, Connecticut Challenge, Junior Achievement, and Operation Hope are participating in the program this year.
Yes. And any of those could receive donations for which the company that would provide the gift could then apply for and receive a tax credit. In the past, companies like R.C. Bigelow, Santa Energy, Newman's Own, among others, have been, participants in this program. So.
Very good. Any further comments from the board?
Just a quick question. Is there any limitation to the number of grants you can apply for either within a year or from a subsequent year? You can apply year after year if you choose to. What are the parameters around that type of thing?
You can apply year after year, and you can put in more than one application. As you
Yeah.
see, some have multiple applications, and you're limited to $150,000 for each program or activity, discrete program. And at the end of the year, it kind of resets, so they don't carry over to the next year. They have to reapply.
Okay.
So, but I've never seen one go in for more than two.
Good deal.
You tend to be cannibalizing yourself, I think,
Right.
in
Right.
some respects. The other thing that I've noticed, at least in the last several years, is that the state obviously has a limit in terms of the amount of tax credits they'll provide for the overall program. This is available for all 169 communities throughout the state. Not every community participates, but the program has been oversubscribed in the past. So even though it'll say this project qualifies for a 60% or 100% tax credit, what happens is if it's oversubscribed, they'll reduce it somewhat. So you may not get 60 cents on the dollar, you might get 55 cents. I mean, the business
Right.
might get 55 or
Right.
56 cents on the dollar. So that happens as well. But it doesn't obviously discourage businesses, because I assume that's better than nothing. So.
Absolutely. And my last question is, how do we promote this to organizations, and how do they find out?
We maintain a mailing list. We also do, so we have a mailing list of organizations that have expressed interest in the program or participated in the past, or those that we know of that might be interested. We supplement it, each year. In fact, I just got a couple other suggestions for people that we should include on our mailing list, whether or not they
Okay.
want to apply. We also put out a notice and a press release to try to cover everything. And we do the same when we receive notice from the state that the programs are approved. There's been a couple years where actually I've had companies call up and say, who is approved under this program that we might make
A contribution to.
contribution
Right.
to. So we do have that information on the ready in case we do get that call.
Lastly, are we up on the website with this information? Is it
We are on the
available?
website.
We are?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's on forms and documents under my page of the website, Community Economic Development, so you can
Okay.
access the list there.
Thank you.
Sheila?
No, I'm familiar with this program. I've seen you pretty much every year when I was on the RTM coming up, and so I'm glad that it's still thriving. And you're basically, again, I think you said you're a liaison. Or
Right.
Right.
We're facilitating the process, but we're not really engaged in any other way, so I
Yeah,
have no
there's
questions.
no town funds involved other
Right.
than my staff time, which is quite modest, to
Right.
be honest. So I think it's a good program to try to provide some support for
Sure.
local nonprofits and groups here in town.
You bet.
At minimal cost to the town.
At minimal cost, absolutely.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Back to the board. Any further comments on the board before we vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Next up, item 11, from the Director of Community and Economic Development. This also requires RTM approval. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Community and Economic Development. Resolved that the program year 41, which is October 1st, 2015 to September 30th, 2016, Community Development Block Grant is hereby approved in an amount to be finalized by HUD. And further resolved that Michael C. Tetro, first Selectman of the Town of Fairfield, be and hereby is authorized to execute any and all necessary documents to facilitate the town's participation in said CDBG program. May I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
A second.
Second.
Mr. Barnhart, you're on.
Again, an annual pilgrimage to your august body to talk about our participation in the Community Development Block Grant. This is a federal grant program that we participate in for probably since the inception of the program back in the 1970s. The town is an entitlement community, meaning that we're of sufficient size by virtue of our population that we need not competitively apply. There's a small cities component available through the state of Connecticut, but we receive direct appropriation, assuming that Congress passes the budget, but we receive funds directly from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to meet community and housing and community development needs that we identify as priorities in town. So we have to prepare a 5-year plan that discusses what those housing community development needs are in our community, and each year we have to prepare an annual plan that relates back to the 5-year plan. It discusses how these particular projects that we propose to fund are going to help address the issues that we identified in our 5-year plan. So we have to do a couple things. We have to conduct a public hearing, obviously, several public hearings. This year's grant is a total of $460,148, which is a very small increase over the current year. As I think all of you know, the beauty of this program is it does provide some flexibilities for communities to address the needs that they think are important, but they have to be eligible to receive funding. They have to relate back to a national objective. And we can't spend more than 20% towards general administrative cost and 15% towards what's known as public service activities. So if you look at the individual programs and activities that we propose to fund, I think you'll recognize many of these organizations under the public service category, for example. Many of these have been funded from year to year under this program. We also have funded street and sidewalk improvements in certain eligible census tract areas of town. We have a very robust first-time homebuyer program and also a program to help homeowners rehab their existing housing, both of which are operated or run out of our department. And we also have provided some assistance to other housing providers like Parish Court and Sullivan McKinney in the past. With respect to those particular projects, I think the board may recall that we've provided funding for those for both Parish Court and Sullivan McKinney in years past. This should be the final stage of both. In the case of Parish Court, we were funding improvements to their fire alarm system so that in the event of a power outage, they will not only have an activation signal that goes to a central command post, but also there'll be an activation signal in the units themselves. That's an existing shortcoming of the system, but we're hoping with this last tranche of funding we'll address that. In the case of Sullivan McKinney, we've been doing some improvements to address accessibility barriers. We've made some improvements to make the building more accessible to folks that have mobility impairments, and these are safety and exterior improvements. This is exterior lighting now in the parking lot. Again, this is hopefully the final phase of that program as well. Again, I think I'd pause at this point and be happy to answer any questions you have with regard to the program.
Any questions from the board?
I do have a question. So with the program administration, which is 20%,
Yes.
Or $92,000 more or less, tell us a little bit about that. That's for your office staff
Correct. Yes.
salary to kind of administer or organize the actual implementation of these grants being used, or these portions of the grants being used?
Yes, it pays largely for salary and benefits associated with one full-time staff position. that is responsible for administering the program as a whole and serving monitoring compliance to the various sub-recipients, but also in addition to that, that individual is directly responsible for administering the programs that we run out of our office, like our handyman, our rehab programs, and our home ownership programs. The only program that I directly administer is the microenterprise program. And I also, this is a shared responsibility in my office, but I'm paid for through the general fund. I do the environmental compliance review, which is required, as well as some of the labor compliance reviews.
And the actual, the allocation to each of the, for example, Operation Hope or Jewish Home, et cetera, you're looking, has this changed significantly from years past, or is it pretty much you look at the organization, that what they're proposing they can do with the money, and then kind of allocate the funds accordingly?
They haven't changed a lot because our overall grant hasn't changed a lot. We look at their past compliance with the program, and to the extent to which they're in compliance with all the program requirements that we have and that HUD has, that we're responsible for reporting on. We are comfortable recommending to you that we provide the continuation of funding for those programs.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Just a couple quickies. Could you go back to the Micro Enterprise Assistant Program and just remind us what that is?
We provide what I would term seed capital, or small business grants, to eligible microenterprises. Microenterprises are defined under federal law as businesses that employ 5 or fewer people.
Okay.
So if we have a microenterprise in town that's located, has its business operations in Fairfield, they can apply. The national objective is how do they serve a low moderate income population. So typically the owner of the business is a person of low moderate income, but need not be. If they are not, then the employees that work for the business should be, at least 51% of the employees should be or will be persons of low moderate income. That's the federal objective, which is to try to encourage job promotion, particularly among people of low to moderate income, including encouraging those folks to start a business. So we've been able to take those broad parameters and create a business development initiative out of that. And so we provide matching funds, 50% up to $5,000 to basically provide startup costs or expand, or to allow the business to expand.
The 10,000 represents how much of their total, their annual grants that they give?
Well, with $10,000, we could fund 2 businesses.
2 businesses,
and,
okay.
If we see more activity than that, that's, I would say, we typically see between 2 and 3 businesses that go through this process and successfully apply and receive an allocation. If we receive more demand for that, we can always amend our plan and allocate additional funds.
Okay. Thank you. And my other question is, and this might be more for you even, is the 60,000 for the sidewalks? Do we have any general areas identified yet in town that we would point this money toward, or are we still working through that?
We do. As this board may recall, we were able to receive some transportation dollars to make sidewalk improvements in the Kings Highway area.
That's right.
And so there are federal and state dollars involved, and we've chosen to direct those resources toward Kings Highway, which is already a state highway. We didn't want to necessarily look at some of the local roads where we do need to fill in or address gaps in our sidewalk infrastructure. But in doing so, using federal or state dollars, we'd have to perhaps build to a much higher standard and increase our cost. So what we'd like to do, even though we would still be subject to prevailing wage using these funds, is look at our local streets in that area and use these funds for that purpose to make those connections.
Some of the side streets.
So we would try to leverage the state and federal dollars that we got to use these federal dollars, which are okay to match, to make some of those connections on some of the local streets.
And since you mentioned it, on that original sidewalk project over on Kings Highway.
Yep.
And I know our intent was we started down by Brentwood, I think, or.
We're starting pretty much at Cumberland Farms and going
yeah.
towards, as far as the money will take us.
How
towards
far are
the-
we, which is my question, how far do we think we're going to get with what we have? Are we up to where the Walgreens is, or past there?
Well, it's yet to be determined. We just began design, and I've been, this is a process that, again, because of the state and the funding source, it's a little bit more protracted than I would like. But they just began the design process, and so we're not quite sure how far
it's gonna
along
go.
it's going to go. But I would like to take it down at least to that.
At least to that.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions?
No.
Anything from the public? Seeing none, back
Thank
to the
you.
board. You ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Mark, thank you. Next up, item 12, from the tax collector, to consider and approve an abatement of taxes for the 2013 grand list taxes due July 2014 through June 2015 for 21 and 63 Devel Drive in the amount of $8,398.24. I have a motion to accept.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All right. Would our tax collector care to come up to the podium and fill us in?
Okay, this is on a property, two
Yep,
properties.
Cinda, if you would introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Cinda Buchter. I'm the tax collector for the town of Fairfield. This is a process that has been going on for actually 20 years now. This is on two properties. One is 21 Devel Drive, the other is 63 Devel Drive. It is in regard to an agreement that was made between the town of Fairfield and the property owner, so that the property is used as for low-income housing to help Fairfield meet its obligation for low-income housing. And if that property is used in that purpose for the entire year, that the taxes will be abated from, for both of those properties. And under state statute, it is the executive body that approves the abatement for the tax collector to do at the end of the year. So that's what this request is about.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Could you just please expand on the agreement, the history of it, and how we got to where we are today?
Okay, well, it's a 38-page document. It's a
Yep.
developer's agreement. It's unique in my 22 years of being a tax collector, but it was an agreement that came upon these two properties. Rather than have them as an exempt property, which most of England low-income housing, things like that, are labeled as exempt, this was an agreement that was made, so if one of the parties changed, I believe the owner changed. Can you speak to that?
Mark Barnhart. This predates my tenure with the town, but my understanding is that when the project was constructed, the developer of the project was unable to pay the builder, and so the property was conveyed to the builder, who currently
Right.
owns the property. It is a bit unusual, as Cinda indicated. Usually these properties are qualified as exempt and doesn't require an annual certification to this board or an action by this board to abate the taxes. That was not done here. I can attest to the fact that this property, like other deed-restricted properties, does file an annual compliance report with this office, so that we know that the properties, the rental units there are 4 apartments that are affordable housing, are in fact maintained as affordable housing, so there are deed restrictions in place, and the rents that are being charged are in accordance with the fair market rent for this area. So they're in full compliance with the agreement, and so we would joins in the recommending that the board abate the taxes.
Thank you for that assistance. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Ms. Barnhart? Okay. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we okay? Next up, to consider and act upon tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount recommended. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Second. And I'd like to make an amendment
Okay?
to delete the period after the sentence and add a comma followed by $56,808.44.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any further discussion on the item? The item as amended is before us. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up, to hear, consider, and act on any communications. I think we'll take your point under new business, if that's okay, or discussion.
Please. Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
So there's none before us to hear, consider, and act on any other business that shall properly come before this meeting. I believe Mr. Kiley requested a moment to have some discussion.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Tetro. And my purpose in asking for a few moments under other business this evening was to just have a discussion at our board level of the still evolving Hartford budget tax issue, specifically as it relates to GE, our largest taxpayer. Now, Mr. Tetro and I spoke yesterday, and the situation is evolving and changing, and we don't know where it's going to end up. But what caught my ears and my eyes mainly was the tone. You know, there's a budget being passed up in Hartford, and that's above our ability to affect here at the moment. But it affects us greatly in the big picture, right? And typically, large executives and senior management teams of companies like GE don't make statements. They aren't very, it's not very often that, you know, the management team of GE would make such a statement that they came out with the other day, which was in essence along the lines of, if these tax increases or these new taxes or taxes that they oppose continue to go through and end up as part of the final budget, then, you know, they might consider leaving. Now, that doesn't just affect Fairfield and GE, it affects the entire state and companies and employers and jobs and families and the economy across the entire state. It's a big problem, potentially. And it specifically affects us, Fairfield, you know, because GE is our largest taxpayer. You know, they pay us roughly $1.9 million every year, which is a lot of money. They are, you know, they have about $77 million of assessed property, which makes up, you know, just under 1% of our grand list, and that's a big percentage. So if that were to, in the worst case scenario, go away, that would be a big blow for the town. And I know that Mr. Tetro has had some conversations with Mr. McGough over at GE that you can brief us on. And I spoke to Mr. McGough as well yesterday myself, and I don't know his exact title. I think it's Manager of Government Relations for the Northeast, but he handles all of the government relations and the legislative matters on behalf of GE for the Northeast section. So he knows what's going on, and obviously what is happening or potentially happening in Hartford is very important. And it's very important to them as a company, but it's also important to them as an employer, and therefore that's important to us as a town. So I thought, since it's ever evolving as we sit here, and the Senate hasn't voted as of a few hours back, right? The last I heard, the Senate hadn't voted, so I don't know where that's going to end up, unless that's old news at this
I
point.
heard this morning that they were potentially going into a special session or having extensions, so we don't know
Right.
the exact
And
date.
I've been tied up during the day, so I haven't, no emails have come through to my
Right.
office, and
Right.
I haven't had a chance to check the news, so I'm a little bit behind, and
Yeah, I'm a couple hours behind as well.
well, we have news media in attendance. If we could tap our live blog.
The Hartford Current just tweeted 7 minutes ago that the Senate is starting to debate the budget.
Okay.
Wow. So that,
Right.
for anybody who did not hear that, Jen Riley from the Fairfield Citizen and Connecticut Post was kind enough to update us that the Senate has just started to debate the budget.
So that's potentially good news or not. We just don't know. But my thought was, since it's happened in the last 2 or 3 days, and, we are the executive, body of this town, that it would make sense to us at least to have an open forum discussion about it so that the people who live in our town will understand that it's important to us as well. And we're trying to understand the situation, stay on top of it, and express our opinions about the situation. So that's kind of my lead-in to the conversation, and I
Can
wanted
you,
to have a conversation, and I have a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share as well at some point.
Well, thank you for kind of bringing this to the table, literally. Can you share, both of you, any part of your conversation that you had with GE yesterday? Just in terms of, I'm sure you probed deeper in terms of, it was a statement, there was no kind of sort of action that they were planning to take, as much as make a statement that this is an important issue under consideration right now in Hartford, and that they're keeping a close eye on it in terms of its potential impact on businesses, including their own. But maybe you could share a little bit more about what you spoke about yesterday.
I think there's several things going on,
Please.
as Mr. Kiley mentioned. One is that, GE was definitely making a statement in terms of how they felt about it, but in a larger sense, as one of the leading corporations in Connecticut, they were speaking on behalf of other corporations in the business community,
Right.
saying, here's how we feel about it, as much as how GE feels about it. And we saw some follow-on comments from other companies, specifically to insurance companies up in the Hartford area, that were basically saying they would reevaluate things based on the results of this vote and the budget. And so that's a statement that's not good for, the Connecticut business community overall. I think there are a number of things going on. One is that there was a change in the tax code being considered, which would go to a unitary tax, and changes in that evaluating how GE and other corporations' operations outside the state of Connecticut would be taxed. Now, there are unitary tax programs in many states around the country. However, how the details of how those unitary taxes work and what income developed outside the state is the point of contention, as I understand it from this. The other piece is that what I'm going to call communication. One is that this unitary tax came up over the weekend. So it's something that came up at the proverbial 11th hour. GE had been understanding that this was off the table.
That's correct.
So when something like this comes back on, it takes a lot of communication. So in other states, and this might take 6 months or longer to be talked about, discussed, and vetted in the business community. So the real impact can be understood. When something like this comes up at the 11th hour, there isn't time to do a full economic impact. There isn't time to have this vetted by the business community. There isn't time to have this fully discussed, considered, and reconsidered. So I think that from a process standpoint, that's something that just doesn't lend itself to coming up with the best solutions. And it certainly created a lot of angst, tension, and kind of almost a crisis mode on Monday as everybody was reacting to this. I had several news media, one TV crew that came in to, interview me in my office because they wanted to know what Fairfield was thinking about this. And if you realize that we had just gotten the press release 30 minutes before. It wasn't, there wasn't time to rethink a whole lot at that point. So I think the lack of communication, the lack of process speaks. And when you look at what we've tried to do here in Fairfield, we've tried to reach out to our top taxpayers. we've tried to maintain a relationship so that we sit down on a regular basis away from the crisis to talk about how we can help, what the relationship should be, what they need, but also, if for no other reason, just so everybody knows everybody. So if something comes up, you're familiar with the person at the other end of the phone. This is something that's pretty standard in the private sector. Pretty much every business knows who their top customers are and tries to build that relationship. It's something that I did as a routine basis in my private sector world, and I suspect both of you have seen the same type of thing in the companies you've worked for.
That's right.
And that was really my comment to Mr. McGough yesterday is how can we help? And he seemed to react to that pretty favorably. We had a good discussion about what was happening, what some of the background was from there, how they felt about it. So that I think that was a very good discussion, helped me understand where they were coming from. He certainly encouraged me to talk to not only our state delegation, but anybody else. I think our state delegation was pretty much on board with helping GE, so I don't think that was really the issue, but certainly he wanted to have our support for that, but also to reach out to anybody else, including the governor, to help with this, even though the matter is before the state legislature at this point. And I think that's the ongoing piece, and we also discussed going forward some opportunities on how we can work together with better communication with Hartford and kind of keep this type of thing from sneaking up on anybody again.
If I may follow on a couple points, to further answer your question as well, and Mr. Tetreault did capture the spirit of the conversation I had with Mr. McGough as well, and thank you for that. When I spoke to Mr. McGough, there were a couple things that seemed like they were hot points, and one of them was the unitary tax itself. And, it's been discussed over the years, but never fully implemented to the point where, it's going to be effective, right? And they apparently were under the understanding that that it wasn't going to be part of this year's budget based on previous conversations or the feel they had gotten from those conversations. And then when it did come back, I believe Sunday morning, they were very surprised. So that set off a number of actions in many different directions. So they were very surprised that it was back on the table. And the other part of it that they seemed, troubled by is the fact that if it went through in its current form, it was going to be, retroactive to a point, meaning it would be effective the current year, which is technically retroactive in tax lingo, right? It's going to be effective this year versus the next year. And he even mentioned that Massachusetts has a similar tax. But when they rolled theirs out, as much as a corporation like GE may not be in favor of the tax itself, it was rolled in, phased in over 18 months. So people had more time to discuss it, to react to it, and to plan around it. So they were, extremely surprised by that aspect of it as well. So a lot of things happening quickly, a lot of conversations, and, a lot of concern, not just for a company, but for the 700 employees, and in our case, the town of Fairfield, our biggest taxpayer. And, should they not be here, if you just did straight math on it, that would be nearly a 1% tax increase across the board before we spent 5 cents.
Right.
So that's significant, and that's important, and that's worthy of discussion. And the last thing I wanted to say is, and Mr. Tetreault touched on this as well, is, ultimately at some point it ends up in the governor's mansion, right? He has to decide what he does at some point and how he directs the legislature on items. So I took it upon myself to draft a letter to the governor. And I've distributed the letter to our board, and it's from the perspective of how this affects, mainly how it affects the town of Fairfield. And if I could just take a couple moments, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wanted to read a couple excerpts from it, just to kind of give a little flavor for how I'm thinking and the comments that I would like the governor to hear from me, if I could. So my letter is to Dear Governor Malloy. As selectman for the town of Fairfield, I am deeply concerned that the state's recent tax proposal has led Connecticut-based companies like General Electric to consider leaving the state. Should GE leave Connecticut, it would have a devastating impact on Fairfield's economy and the livelihood of many of our residents. We urge you to listen to the concerns of these companies and to enact tax policy that will help make businesses of every size in Connecticut succeed. As you know, GE's headquarters has been in Fairfield for decades. Many of the company's 7,000 Connecticut-based employees call Fairfield home. To lose a business like GE has real consequences. GE represents nearly 1% of Fairfield's tax base and pays nearly $2 million in annual taxes to our town. That is money we cannot afford to lose. Families in Fairfield would also face job losses, lower property values, and economic decline. When GE speaks, people listen. Their concerns, however, represent the struggles of many small and medium-sized businesses in our state. Connecticut's unemployment rate is 6.3%, nearly 1% higher than the national average. While the unemployment rate remains high, so do our taxes. The top marginal corporate rate is 9%, the 8th highest in the nation. And then, you know, I have some other points that I'll make in the letter thereafter, but the gist of the letter is to explain how I feel this situation could potentially negatively impact our town, our citizens, our tax base, our grand list, and every local business that benefits from people who are employed, doing well economically in our town. So I felt important to connect to the governor and let him know how I feel. And I think it would be, at some point, I think it would be good if the executive body of this town, the three of us, could collaborate and message something very similar to the governor on not just this situation, but how this situation affects the 60,000 people that live in our town. So thank you for the time. I do appreciate the opportunity to discuss this in public. And hopefully it'll have a happy ending, right? Hopefully it won't go through, but I think we need to be prepared, and we need to you know, begin the conversations on the effects of it and how we can help, as Mr. Tetro said, how we can help everyone have a good outcome to this.
Did you send that to our state legislators as well?
I will copy them on it.
I think you should, because
Yeah.
the time is now.
Yeah.
But I also just want to add to that, because we're talking about existing companies in Connecticut, but also really what everybody is also talking about is attracting businesses to Connecticut, how
That's right.
important that is. And so I think that's the other side of the argument, that it's keeping the businesses we have, but growing businesses, new businesses in Connecticut. And to your point, you know, we have to really look at the big picture when it comes to that.
You bet.
I think what I like about Mr. Kiley's points here is, I think from our standpoint, we always talk in terms of representing the 60,000 residents of Fairfield. But I think, to me, this also points out that we represent the business community in Fairfield. And I think the idea that we need to the extent that we can, reinforce their message with our friends up in Hartford. And it may not have as much of an impact this year because of the timing and where everything came. That's one of the problems of having a proposal like this come up Sunday morning, which was just 72 hours ago.
It's crazy.
Certainly, we didn't hear about it right away, so it took a while to get to us. It took a while for everybody to hear about it, and so we've been reacting since then. And you never like to be in a position of crafting any significant tax policy or other policy in 72 hours. So you'd like more time to look at it than that. And I think when you look at our economy, the number one thing I believe everybody would agree on that we need is jobs. All right, to get more jobs, there are really only two ways. Your existing companies expand and add more workers, or new companies move into your community.
That's right.
That works for our town of Fairfield, but also for the state, and to a certain degree the country. I think that in looking at this, my concern, if the business community doesn't feel positive or doesn't feel comfortable, the one thing they can turn off right away is not expanding here in Connecticut and looking at other options. They may not move out right away, but they can certainly stop expanding right away, because it doesn't cost them anything to stop expanding. So that you always want to find a way. You want to make sure that the business community is comfortable with where you're going and is knowledgeable and informed about where you're going. And I think the communication process here definitely broke down when you have an 11th hour component with something coming through that has a significant impact, that, in our case, our number one taxpayer, but GE is a major player in the state, not only just Fairfield, that they didn't see coming. And that's the kind of surprise I think you don't want to have. So I think there's got to be better communication through the system, and I think we need to make sure that we're doing our part to help our corporate residents, our corporate citizens communicate through. So perhaps we can take a look and collaborate on that, and
I would be happy to do that. And, back to your point on the communication, that was very troubling, that something happened at the 11th hour over a weekend after people thought something else was going to be the case. And the reaction by GE was very stern. And that's not typical of a corporation of their stature to issue a statement like that. They're generally much more conservative in their communications than that. And it was like, wow, I mean, they really are serious about this. And, and as should we be, right? So we'll see what happens. We don't know until they vote and the final numbers are in, but it appears that, we could have a potential significant,
Impact.
budgetary problem for us down the road. So anything we can do to keep that from happening is good for our town.
Thank you, Kevin, for taking the initiative and bringing this to us and drafting the letter, and thank you.
all right.
My pleasure.
Again, thank you very much, and let's take the rest of this up offline.
Sure.
Any further discussion points? All right, then may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you both.
Thank you.